Hello, Year 11, and welcome to your lessons this week. This week's lessons, we're looking at revising resource management. Now, the first lesson that we're going to look at is UK resources revision. And the things that we're going to look at in today's lesson are the key term mind map of water and food resources in the UK. So, what are the demands for food and how is the supply changing? We're then going to look at explaining the impacts of fracking in the UK. So, what has fracking done in the UK? Is it positive or negative? And then finally, we're going to use the information that we've revised through this lesson to then have a go at answering a geographical exam question. Now, as per usual, it tells you what equipment it needs in the bottom left-hand corner, and then you've got know your level. And again, no one's saying that you can't do a level that is higher than your current MG. But what we were looking for, if your MG is up to a 4, you should be doing the developing tasks. If your MG is up to a 5 or 6, you should be doing the secured tasks. And if you are aiming for a 7+, you should be aiming to do those mastered tasks. Okay, moving on to our first learning objective of this lesson, we're going to look at food and water resources in the UK. First thing I want you to do is you can either create this mind map, or if you go to the help sheet, which is on class charts, this mind map is already set up for you, and you can either print that out if you've got the opportunity to, or you can write on the Word document adding to the different parts of this mind map. So just give you a minute now just to pause the video, and you can either create this mind map, or you can use the one on class charts. So just pause the video while you get that set up. Okay, so the task that I'm going to ask you to do then is to use the resources that are located on class charts and your revision guide, which is page 86, to fill in the information on this mind map. For developing, I want you to add information to each section of the mind map about the food and water resources in the UK. So you're going to look at the questions and then look at the information on the resource packs to fill in the information around your mind map. For secured, I then want you to link to SEEP for the different sections of the mind map. So that's linking to social, economic, environmental, or political. And can you explain why it links that? So if you're going to say it's a social impact, why is it affecting people? Okay. For some of the branches on the mind map, they will not actually link to SEEP. So it's just for the ones that you think will link to SEEP. Mastered then, can you think of any positives and negatives to the food supply improvements? And those parts of the mind map are your agribusiness, your seasonal food, and your organic farming. And what are the good things about them? So that's the positives, and what are the negatives about them? So you're just adding them to that part of the mind map. Okay, so once you've completed your mind map, you take a picture ready to upload to class charts. So just pause the video here, ready to complete the task. Moving on to learning objective 2 of this lesson, we're going to look at fracking in the UK. Now, shortly we're going to watch a video, and what I want you to do while we're watching this video is, can you create a definition for fracking? So fracking is, and then just explain what it is. So what is the process of fracking? So watch the video. Can you create your definition of fracking, please?
In case you hadn't heard, we humans use a lot of oil and gas these days, just a couple of sorts of hydrocarbons, organic compounds made out of hydrogen and carbon atoms. They are a magnificent source of stored energy, running a car engine or a fighter jet or a weed whacker or a power plant. Hydrocarbons are pretty useful. A lot of the world's precious petroleum comes from the Middle East, but that puts a few of the world's countries in the position of having all of the useful oil and gas. So, of course, the rest of us are interested in hunting down some domestic sources. And actually, it turns out the Middle East doesn't have the hydrocarbon market cornered. They just have a lot more liquid petroleum than most places. But a lot of the rest of the world has reserves of natural gas. Gaseous hydrocarbons like methane, propane, and butane. Usually found deep underground in giant beds of shale, rock that was formed from the floors of ancient oceans. Natural gas is likely how your water gets heated and maybe even your air. Burning it for electricity is cleaner and more efficient than coal oil, and unlike oil, when it spills, it just vents into the atmosphere instead of spreading out in huge slicks over the ocean. But the problem with natural gas has always been, how do we get at it? We know it's there, but we can't get it. Well, since the 40s, oil companies have known that breaking up the rocks in deep underground formations can increase the productivity of wells. See, it's not just one big pocket of black gold down there. Oil and gas can occur in thousands of little pockets, and by fracturing the rocks around these pockets, the gas is released and can be collected. Usually, this fracturing involves pumping millions of gallons of chemically treated water into deep shale formations. We're talking a mile or more underground at extremely high pressures. This fluid cracks the shale or widens existing cracks, freeing the hydrocarbons and making a path for them to flow toward the well. So that's how it's done, basically, and some people are so unbelievably pumped about this technology they're building little graven images to it and going to natural gas wells on Sunday mornings. But then, some scientists are like, not so fast, you guys, because fracking isn't all butterflies and cupcakes. For starters, it uses a whole lot of water. It takes up to 7 million gallons to frack a single well. And at least 30% of that water is trapped in the shale thousands of feet below the groundwater aquifer, so it's gone for good. And fracking fluid isn't just water, it's sand, which helps keep the cracks open once they're formed, and also chemical additives, which can vary from well to well and are often confidential. These additives do things like thicken the water to help suspend the sand or prevent mineral buildup in the pipe, and some of them are things you might find under your kitchen sink. Others, like benzene and methanol, are pretty toxic. Some concerns about the contents of these fracking fluids, not to mention radium, corrosive salts, and other stuff that comes back up from a mile underground, have led places like Pennsylvania to prohibit fracking outfits from sending their wastewater to local treatment plants. And although fracking, when done correctly, shouldn't contaminate drinking water aquifers, that doesn't mean it hasn't happened. Subterranean systems are mysterious, and it's impossible to tell how interconnected these shale deposits might be with groundwater. If the fracturing is too effective, groundwater aquifers and shale deposits containing newly injected fracking fluid can mix. Although it's hard to say how many cases of contamination have been caused by improperly installed or maintained fracking wells, improperly bored or sealed wells have contaminated drinking water in several sites in the U.S., resulting in energy companies being fined for polluting water supplies. While natural gas is a far cleaner fuel than coal, the fact that it doesn't spill and instead vents to the atmosphere is also problematic for climate change. Methane is a potent greenhouse gas, and if it isn't burned as it vents from fracking wells, it can contribute even more to global warming. And finally, earthquakes. It's crazy, but some U.S. states like Oklahoma, Texas, and Colorado have been experiencing a significant rise in seismic activity, which seems to be corresponding to the fracking boom. Some studies are suggesting that the disposal of wastewater back into used wells are causing the pressurized water to seep through cracks onto old fault lines, causing many more earthquakes than normal, even in places where seismic activity is rare. So fracking, creating a new oil and gas boom in the U.S., sure, but it might not be all it's fracked up to be. Sorry, we didn't make any Battlestar Galactica jokes, so if you want, you could put those down in the comments. And if you have any questions or comments or just want to argue about it, the comments are there for that as well. There's also sources if you'd like to check those out. That would be good. And if you want to keep getting smarter with us here at SciShow, you can go to youtube.com/SciShow and subscribe.
So, your definition for fracking is the process of drilling down into the earth before a high-pressure water mixture is directed into the rock to release the gas that's inside. So, now that we know what fracking is, I'm going to ask you to do the following task, okay? So, I'm going to ask you to do a word wall activity, so you're going to have to come out of this video once I've finished explaining. Go to class charts and open up the word wall activity, and this is where we're going to look at matching up the positives and negative impacts of fracking. So you need to go on there and decide whether those impacts are positive or negative. Once you've sorted that out, you can move on to the secure task, which is then sorting those impacts and deciding which of those impacts is social, which one's economic, and which one's environmental. So which one links to people, which one links to money, and which one links to nature or links to the environment changing. And then for master, do you think fracking is the best method for the UK to produce energy? And I want you to explain that answer if you go onto the master task using pedals. So I think it is the best method to produce energy because this means that this leads to. And then if you think opposite, obviously I think a better method is this. This means that this links to. And you only need to do one pedal paragraph for that, not two, okay? So can you just pause the video now so you can pick the task that you're going to do, You will need to go onto word walls. Just pause the video now so that you can complete the task. So moving on to learning objective 3, we're going to look at completing an exam question. Now the exam question that I'm going to ask you to do is on the slide here, which says, with the help of figure 8 and 9, explain why the process of fracking for gas causes conflict between different groups of people. Now reading that question, it sounds quite difficult and there's quite a lot of terminology in there that might be difficult for you to understand. So what we're going to do first of all is we're going to try and decode this question. So you will need a whiteboard, and what I'm going to ask you to do is decode the question. Decoding the question just means breaking it down into simple language. So what is the question asking you to answer? So before I ask you to pause the video and have a go at this, let's just highlight some of the key parts of this question. So first of all, it's asking you to use the help of figure 8 and 9. So what does that mean? Where are we going to get our information from? It then goes on to explain why the process of fracking for gas causes conflict between different groups of people. So what does the word process mean? Okay, and how does it link to fracking for gas? Okay, next one then is causes of conflict. And again, what does conflict mean and how does it link to between two different groups of people? And then finally, what two groups of people would have conflict in terms of fracking for gas? And think about the last task that we just did. We split up our impacts into SEEP. So which two bits of SEEP will there be groups of people that may have a conflict over fracking for gas? So what I want you to do is on your whiteboard, can you have a go at decoding this question, put it into simple language to tell me what you think this question is asking you to answer. So just pause the video now and have a go at changing the terminology of this question. So I've given you a bit of time there, or you've paused the video rather, and you have had a chance to decode this question. So let's just go through those key terms or key words that I've highlighted already on this exam question. So help from figure 8 and 9. Okay, if it's asking you to use help from figure 8 and 9, that means the information that you need to answer this question will be in those figures. So use the information from these figures. It then goes on to process. Okay, what does the process mean? How does it work? So what is fracking and how does it work? And what is the process of fracking? Okay, we then move on to the cause of conflict. And conflict, okay, is just an argument or a disagreement between different groups of people. And that then links on to our next bit where I said to think about SEEP. Think about SEEP. And remember, SEEP would be social, economic, environmental, or political. Which of those two groups would have different views in terms of the process of fracking? So there are two things that we can look at. Economists, so those are people that look at the amount of money that's being made, and then you've got environmentalists, and those are people that are worried about the impact it will have on the environment. So we're going to look at those two viewpoints and why they would have different views on the process of fracking. Okay, so just finally, okay, the question is asking you to use the information from figure 8 and 9. Why does fracking cause arguments or issues between economists and environmentalists? So before we move on to actually answering the question we've just looked at, just want to go through figures 8 and 9 because at the beginning it tells you with the help of figures 8 and 9 answer the question. So this is 8 and 9, the figures, and you can get the information that you need to answer this question from these two figures. So figure 8 first of all is showing you the process of fracking. So how do we release gas from under the ground? So this is what fracking is. Okay, it would then move on to the second sentence, which is telling us about the environmental issues. And those are the things that are happening that are having impact, mainly negative impact on the environment. So these are the bad things that are happening to the environment. And then finally, you've got your economic benefits. And that just means things that are making money for the country through the process of fracking. Okay, we then move on to figure 9. And figure 9 is just showing you a map of the UK, or rather England, Scotland and Wales. Okay, and it's showing you areas that are in red that have licenses for fracking. So those are areas that already have fracking taking place. And then the grey areas are areas that is under consideration for fracking. So they're actually thinking about, they're trying to get the license so that they can actually start fracking in that area. So things to think about: where is fracking taking place at the moment in the UK, and what are the impacts in these areas? So what I would say to do right now is just pause the video, and you can use your whiteboard again, and you want to look for a environmentalist view. So those are the environmental issues, and you want to look for an economic benefit, which would be linking to an economist. So just pause the video now while you find those two pieces of information ready to answer your question. So that brings us on to the final task, and we're going to have a go at answering the exam question that we've just decoded. So you've got the question at the top of the sheet. You've also got in the green box, the decoded question that has been put into simpler terminology. You've then got figure 8 and 9 in the bottom left hand corner. So the task that I'm going to ask you to do, okay, using the help sheet and figure 8 and 9, answer one of the following questions. So you're going to answer either developing, secured, or mastered. Now the help sheet on class charts has sentence starters for each one of these questions, which you can use to answer the questions. So what I want you to do is read the questions that are on the board now, and then I want you to go over to class charts, use the sentence starters and prompts to answer one of the questions. Once you've done that, can you take a picture of your work ready to upload to class charts? So that brings us to the end of this lesson, Year 11. Thank you for taking part. Just before we finish the lesson, I just want to go through the things I'd expect you to upload to class charts. So the first thing I want you to do is upload your picture of your mind map, which shows the water and the food resources mind map, okay? And that links to our key term mind map of water and food resources in the UK. Second thing I'd like you to upload is your picture of your geographical skills answer. And remember, that links to the last one, which is a geographical skills, also links to the second learning objective because it links to fracking, okay? So again, well done for participating in this home learning today. Again, all the geography teachers looking forward to seeing your work. Keep up the hard work, guys. I'll see you next lesson.